Hi, Denise.
Yeah,
I know that recording in progress. It's such a scary voice.
I know. I've had that before. It's just like, yes, recording in progress.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing a bit of your story.
No problem.
I think a lot of people have already seen your blog, so it's just fantastic to be able to hear other people's journeys and the real kind of experiences behind tinnitus. So I really appreciate this.
Not a problem.
So maybe just tell me a bit about what tinnitus was like for you when it all started, right at the beginning. When did you first ever notice tinnitus come up?
See, I don't know whether my story is a little bit more unique to other people's stories because technically my tinnitus started when I was very young. So I actually noticed my tinnitus when I was a teenager, which I don't know if it's very common to get tinnitus in your teens, but certainly I at first I didn't know it was tinnitus. I heard this noise, but it didn't scare me. Perhaps I'm not sure why it didn't scare me. Like it didn't worry me at that time. But the only reason why I then got tested for tinnitus, I was reading an article in a newspaper about it, and it was like it dawned on me that this is what I probably had. So I felt compelled to get checked out with the hospital. And I'm going back to sort of by the time I was diagnosed with tinnitus, I was about 18. So we're going back into sort of the late 90s. So obviously tinnitus and what we know about tinnitus has changed completely since then. So I had the normal hearing tests, and yeah, the audiologist at the time confirmed, yes, it's definitely tinnitus, and diagnosed with tinnitus in both my ears. And my tinnitus was like sort of like a white noise, sort of ringing noise that I had. Weirdly at the time, like I don't feel even after diagnosis it bothered me. Now I don't know whether that was a good thing at the time because my mind had adapted to that noise, and therefore I accepted my diagnosis and kind of moved on. Um, there were different things at the time that could help you with your diagnosis, not quite like that they are now. But being 18 years old, my priority in life was to go out and have fun with my friends. And being told at the time you shouldn't be exposing your ears to a certain amount of loud noise was not a good thing. And probably for a while, I probably ignored that advice and still went out clubbing and stuff like that to the point that I did start noticing it was affecting me and affecting my life. And therefore, I did start making changes from then onwards. But yeah, pretty much that's how my tinnitus started. That's how I first found out I had tinnitus. I don't know how it started. That's another thing. I don't think I'll ever really remember or know how it started. I mean, I think at the time most people say, "Oh, it's usually a shock or sudden bang to the head or something like that, or real exposure to loud noise." But at that age, being young, I couldn't think of anything that I was exposed to that was going to produce the tinnitus. So to me, even to this day, it's always been a mystery as to how my tinnitus started at such a young age.
No, thank you for sharing that, Denise. And can I just clarify? So at that age, and when you had tinnitus initially, did it affect you on a day-to-day basis, or do you feel like you did just accept it and it was in the background?
Yeah, I think it was hard to remember really because I mean it's been so long ago now. I think to a point I must have accepted it because I don't remember being very fearful of it at the time. Um, I do remember times when I used to go out and used to, like you say, with friends, used to go clubbing and things like that. And I used to come out and I used to have like the really loud ringing. And everybody used to say they get ringing because I think that's quite normal, isn't it, after you've been in a loud place. So I didn't think much of it. Um, and maybe because my mum wasn't focused on it, I didn't really notice it. It was most of the time in the background. It did go through a phase though, which I reached into my early 20s of really of getting worse for a while. And obviously went back to the doctor and they said, well, basically, you know, you got to stop going to these loud places, which I kind of inevitably did. Luckily, I was at that age where I was sort of pulling away from wanting to do all that kind of social side of things. So, and it did go for a phase of spiking, but it did calm down.
Okay, and then maybe t tell me a bit about what brought you to, working with me. What changed for you with your tinnitus?
So, I mean, obviously, I've lived with tinnitus for many years, so I'm now in my 40s, and so I carried my tinnitus all the way through my 20s, all the way through my 30s. My ringing in my ears was the same. It was work a continuous white noise, which my brain somehow adapted to. Um, Again, I don't very I wasn't the kind of person that went out and exposed myself after that to too many loud places, so maybe that helped. So it sat there for a while, mingled into the background. And then it's hard to say. It wasn't until about 6 months ago now. I had a few sudden changes in my life. I'd had a few quite traumatic experiences a year or two before then, but um, when it reached about 6 months ago, it was more I had suddenly lost my job. And all of a sudden, I felt this weird stuck in a rut feeling. And then one morning, I woke up very early in the morning to this horrendously loud tinnitus noise, louder than my normal tinnitus. Because normally with my tinnitus, once I'm up and about, the noise sort of blends into the background of the everyday environmental sounds around me. But this was so loud, I just couldn't. It was just in one ear, in my left ear. I just could not concentrate. It really worried me. I didn't know what was going on. Um, I told my husband, he didn't really understand, he doesn't have it. And I sort of spent most of the day sort of trying ways to stop this noise. You know, and it was so hard. I was turning up noises around me. I just felt like it was getting worse, and I just sort of panicked. But I don't know what happened. But then after about 24 hours, the noise did subside. It passed with like relief to me. It passed, but I think psychologically it stayed on my mind, feeling like, is this going to come back? Why did this happen? Um, and although since then that loud noise hasn't come back in that form, it was a little while after I started hearing my tinnitus change completely. When I say change completely, I still had the white noise in the background, but then there was this added new tinnitus noise that suddenly came about, and it was the only way I could describe it was a low. It was only in my left ear this time again, and it was this very low. The only way I can describe a very low funnel humming noise. And it was quite bizarre because at first I did not associate it with tinnitus. I associated with it as something else that was going on with my ear. And to be honest with you, I'd read up about pulsatile tinnitus, which I know can happen if people have got high blood pressure. And I thought I'd better get it checked out. So I went to the GP, explained what I was experiencing. And then he referred me to the hospital. It took a while to get to the hospital, but then the hospital checked me over, and they said they said it wasn't anything. They'd given me a CT scan just to check the blood vessels around my head. There was nothing to indicate there's any issues whatsoever. So he didn't even suspect it would be pulsar tinnitus. But in my head, I just was not convinced. I think when you're living with something like that noise, and they say, "Oh, there's nothing there," you're like, "No, that can't be right. There is something there." You're not convinced. Um, and so I decided to get a second opinion. And this time I paid to see a private ENT specialist because I was so convinced that there was something there. I couldn't wrap my head around that the noise that I was getting in my ear was related to my tinnitus because it was so different. I then saw the private ENT specialist, who was a very, very nice doctor. Once again, she checked me over, she looked at my scans, and she concluded exactly the same as the NHS doctor that it was tinnitus. It was nothing severe, there was nothing else going on in there. She was a little bit more empathetic to the point that she suggested that perhaps I need to find solutions to help me with my tinnitus. She was going to recommend me to a private like audiologist that deals with the tinnitus side of things, but I didn't. I don't think I wanted to do it at the time. I think it was a costly thing, that kind of thing. I think I was a little bit more confused in my head as to what was going on. There was a lot going on inside my head. I kind of walked away from that appointment still feeling disappointed and worried. That's all I could feel, was completely and utterly worried about what was going on. And as much as she said it was my tinnitus, my brain just would not accept this diagnosis, because I'd had my other tinnitus, my white noise tinnitus, for so long. I didn't think that my tinnitus could change. I didn't think that that noise could change as severely as it did, just suddenly like that overnight. I just couldn't be convinced. And then it just got worse and worse, and I wasn't sleeping. Then that caused me my anxiety to increase, caused me not to eat. I eventually couldn't go to work. I'd taken on some temporary work after I lost my job. I was doing that temporary. I couldn't even do that. And I just hid myself away. I just felt utter despair. I felt depressed. I felt alone. I felt like I was never going to get the help. I thought this was going to be it for the rest of my life. How was I going to live with this? It's hard to explain the mental torture when you have a diagnosis like that, but it affects your mental health in so many ways, to the point, and that's when it came to me finding you, because I did get to the point I was like, I'm going to need help with this. Somewhere in the deepest, darkest depths of my brain, I still thought to myself, I need to get help. Surely there must be someone out there that can help me and understand this condition. And like I did, I scrolled the internet, and for ages I couldn't find anything. I kept finding those diagnoses of like, well, this is tinnitus, this is how it is, this is how you have to live with it. And there was no, I couldn't find anything that was going to help me. I didn't know what kind of help I was looking for, which doesn't help the situation. When you're in that, where do you look? What am I looking for? I don't know what I was looking for, but it is then by chance that you popped up on my Google search. And I liked reading about you. You seemed the kind of person that seemed genuine and potentially could understand what I was going through. And just like on a whim, I just made an appointment with you. And then we had an initial first call. And from then, life with tinnitus started. I started to understand my tinnitus, and I started to start feeling normal again, and I started to feel like life was coming back to me again. So yeah, it was a it was a rough ride beforehand.
Denise, thank you so much again for sharing that. Just so many people can resonate with those initial emotions that you were feeling, that despair, searching for answers, searching for clarity, not being able to find that clarity. Can I ask, Denise, do you think when you got tinnitus all those years ago, when you were in your late teens, do you feel like you understood what tinnitus really was, or that anyone helped you understand what it was? Or do you feel like it was this ringing that I have that's the same, and that's just what it's going to be like, and because I think I know what it is, it's fine.
Yeah, I think what you've said is correct. I nobody really. I mean, from what I remember, the audiologist did briefly explain what tinnitus was in a way. It's hard to explain. It was so long ago now. I can't quite. I remember him explaining it, and I accepted it. But the explanation of what he explained then to what it is now is completely different. And I don't know, it's because we've had more research since then. Our understanding of tinnitus has changed. That makes a difference. So I spent a lot of those years in that mindset, oh, this is how tinnitus is. I'm very much a reader, and I do a bit of my own research. So I did a lot of reading, and I read a lot of things about tinnitus at the time. So I did have an understanding of it. I didn't have no knowledge at all. However, the opinions of tinnitus did differ slightly. So some people, I remember reading a really interesting article about tinnitus being ingrained in our sort of early evolution. So, which is not so dissimilar to what we talk about now about how tinnitus works. That back when we were like hunter-gatherer times, we had to hunt for our food and look out for danger. Our bodies and our ears or our audiology system were more acute to hearing things because we needed to hunt to find that food. So if we could hear I don't know, a deer in the background somewhere, we were going to go and find that deer, weren't we? So they do say that it was almost like over time that part of us has switched off, but some people it hadn't switched off, which was quite interesting. So in my world, I just assumed that I was one of those unique people that could hear more things than other people could hear. So, in a weird way at the time, it was quite unique to me, and I quite liked that uniqueness. But yeah, I got different opinions from different people about what tinnitus was, but overall, the the overall consensus was that there is no cure for it and you have to live with it. Yeah.
I see. And you mentioned that some of the doctors would say, try and avoid exposing yourself to loud noise. Do you feel like you got any tools or strategies to deal with the tinnitus specifically or prepare for what was to come earlier this year back then?
um not not really. I did at one point a few years back obviously registered with my hospital where I get my hearing tested. So I was always trying to be on top of my hearing, getting my hearing tested. And there was a lovely lady there that worked in the audiology department who was aware, obviously, of my reasons for becoming my tinnitus. And I would say at the time she was quite helpful. And at the time she gave me sound aids, which was probably one of the only things I've ever really used to help my tinnitus since now. Which basically look like hearing. I don't know if anyone's ever used them, but like they're basically the hearing aids, but the reverse is that they produce like almost like a white noise sound that goes in your ears. And it's supposed to, I think the idea of it is supposed to cancel out the noise of your own tinnitus or calm it down. And I did use them for a while, but I'm not sure how well I felt that they worked. I didn't think there was an enormous change in my tinnitus, to be honest with you. But at the time, you get given these things and you try it because if it's there, you're going to try it to see if it helps in any way.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And with the GPs and the ENTs, was there anything that you think they could have told you that might have made your journey this year a bit easier?
The GPs, no, they were quite frankly dire. Is the word that I can use. My certainly my GPs. There was no, I don't know. There was no time. There's no empathy. There was no. The GPs didn't really understand what my tinnitus was. It's almost like I had to explain to them what tinnitus was because they didn't know what it was. So the GPs tend to just naturally just refer you to the hospital because they look at you, think to themselves, I don't really know what it is. Clearly, she's got a problem with her ears. Let's just refer her to the audiology department or an ENT specialist. I didn't feel I got any help to a point that because on occasions that I'd gone to the doctors and I was quite emotionally distressed, one doctor, and I mean, I don't have the same doctor all the time. My doctor varies every time I go. One doctor actually turned around and gave me the number for a distress line to call. Um, and it was like, well, well, what are they going to do? If I phone up this helpline, what are they going to do? They can't help me. It felt like I was talking to a brick wall and not getting any answers back. Now, to be fair, when I went to see the ENT specialist and the audiologists that I've seen, obviously they were a bit better. They had better understanding of it. So I can't criticize them in that respect. They were a lot more, they explained to a point what was going on in my ears. Especially the private ENT specialist, she was very, very good. But overall, I feel like the information I was getting wasn't giving me solutions. It was masking the issue. So, like you say, like I talked about the sound aids, a lot of doctors and that they suggest the sound aids, which I get, and I get the reasons why they do that. But they, like you said, they're masking the noise. It's masking the noise. It's not finding a solution how to get rid of the noise. Or helping me to calm the noise in any form whatsoever. I mean, there was all this thing about, oh, just need to relax, you just maybe try yoga, and to a point, yeah, I get that, you get that you need to relax, but it wasn't the advice I was hoping to receive, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what made you feel safe enough to take that next step with working with myself?
Well, my first reason why I spoke to you is because you have tinnitus. And one of the biggest things when you have tinnitus is there's nothing, it sounds a bit weird when I say this, but it's so comforting to speak to somebody that has tinnitus as well. Somebody that knows exactly what's going on in your brain. Unfortunately, I didn't really know anyone that had tinnitus. So I kind of lived a long time with tinnitus and it just being me on my own. It was in this lonely world of tinnitus. So speaking to somebody and somebody that was a professional who had tinnitus just made a huge world of difference. That was the biggest thing for me. The biggest thing was that when I spoke to you about what I was feeling, what I was hearing, what was going on in my brain, is you just totally took that on board and you totally understood and you had empathy. And empathy was such a massive thing for me. For someone to be almost feeling and knowing what it's like to how I'm feeling is enormous for me. It helped me to almost take that big step forward. It made me take a bigger step forward because the advice you were giving me is coming from somebody that's experienced it. And I think that's what the difference is.
No, I can totally relate. I live in a world where I speak to so many people with tinnitus, and I sometimes have to take a step back and understand that not everybody has that
Yeah,
opportunity, and it can be so isolating and so lonely, with this sound and nobody, especially people close to you, not really understanding what's going on. So being able to speak to somebody who has done that journey or understands what you're experiencing can be incredibly validating.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
And what did you learn that changed how you approach your tinnitus, Denise?
I think one of the first things I learned was you telling me what is happening inside my body when I have a spike in my tinnitus. You explain not only the auditory system, but you explain everything else that's going on in my body, um, and what causes, what triggers the tinnitus. And I think that was a sort of a realization. It was almost like a light bulb moment for me that although I'd always been told, "Oh, you need to relax," I didn't really. I don't think you really understand. I didn't understand what they mean by relax. Um, you opened up sort of my mind to thinking more about what's going on inside my body because I think a lot of people think it's all going on here inside your ear. I mean, it's actually not. It's going on in here. It is going on in your head, but it's going on in here. It's going on in every single part of your body. And that opened up a whole world to me to understand how my nervous system gets triggered. But what opened more doors for me is the insights into why my body was doing what it was doing, and opening and finding out why my body was doing led down to paths in helping me to help my body to recover. Um, and that wasn't taking a tablet. That wasn't, here you go, here's a tablet, it's going to cure it. I knew that from the start. I knew a tablet is not going to cure it. But listening to somebody that says this will get better, this will get better, even though at the time, still for a very long time, and still it goes through my mind at times now, I feel like, oh, will it get better? But it does get better. And then finding books to read that resonate with me on that same level, finding the book that I read um, recently, that one was it was sorry, I've forgotten the author's name now. But the book I read, he was fantastic, really fantastic. It meant I had to go down, and I'm still going down on a deeper level and finding what needs to cure my nervous system.
Are you happy to share some of the things that you have started doing to try and help
Yeah,
your
yeah, of
nervous
course.
system?
So I've tried and tested a few things. I think you have to do that along the way. Certainly, my weekly sessions with you have been amazing because I think like that sort of almost like one-to-one counseling session to talk about it and get it out your head has been enormous for me. Knowing that every week I can sit down at a chair and talk to someone and blurt out, oh, I've got this really weird noise, and why is it making that noise, and why am I doing this, and why do I feel so anxious, and and someone sitting there and truly listening to what I'm saying is massive. But since then I've tried a few things. I tried doing yoga, but yoga didn't really work for me. I didn't enjoy it. And the one thing I've also learned over the last few months is that as much as people say to you, but yoga is really good for you, it's really, if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. But I did give it a go. So, yeah. And I also, what else did I go down and do? I decided to see a counsellor for CBT because what was going on with my nervous system is of layers and layers of stress, trauma, mild trauma to bigger traumas that had happened over pretty much my whole life. Now, if I looked back at my life right now, I would think, oh, what major traumas have I had? And then there might have been like a couple maybe in my head to think with. But then I think to myself, when I really look deeper on a deeper level, it doesn't have to be the big traumas that set off your nervous system. It's those mild traumas that you don't think are traumas at the time and actually are. That's anything from having stuff going on at school, where I was bullied at school, going through to my childhood and relationships with my family, relationships with other people, jobs, um, everything like that. So, and to this day, I'm still having CBT, and what I'm doing in CBT. Originally, I went and I started talking a lot about my tinnitus, but actually, I've stepped away from that, and what I'm doing is I'm talking about all going through a list of all those traumas I've had and talking them out, because as much as I can talk about my tinnitus, it's not the tinnitus, it's my nervous system that I need to heal. So that's what I'm doing. So that is going to be a long progress. I don't know how long that will take, but it's a progress and it's a journey. As they say, it's a journey, but it is truly just a journey. And then so that's certainly a keeper for me, and I've been doing that. I still go for my 3 to 4 weekly massages because at the end of the day, I do still love a massage, and at the end of the day, it's something that I think I'm allowing me time. And the one important thing I've learned is to try and have me time. I So I go sort of for an hour. I have my eyebrows done at the same time, and then I have like this weekly massage, and it's just me. It's just what I need to do. I probably want to up that a little bit at some point and to try and make sure I book in some spa days maybe, because I do love a spa day. And I think again, it's important to take time out for yourself. I have a 12-year-old girl and a husband that does like long shift patterns, so I don't always get the time to do stuff myself. It's always I'm either working, looking after the house, doing stuff for my daughter. So I don't always get a lot of time, but I try and schedule in that time, which is massive. Um, I also, being in my 40s, I know I'm perimenopausal, which I think to a point can have an impact on how your body is anyway. Um, so I'm definitely on top of my GP with that. I take HRT because it's for me that's personally that's good for me. I make sure I'm on top of that, and I make sure I'm taking all the right vitamins to keep my body. One key thing is to keep as healthy as possible. And really important thing, I reduced the alcohol I was drinking. Now I wouldn't say I was a massive drinker, but I did feel like I was probably drinking more than I should have done. And that is really easy to do. One thing that is really easy to is that, oh, I just have a couple of glasses of wine, it will help me relax. And, to a point it did, but it doesn't, because in the long run, it does not help your body in any way. So I've massively reduced the amount of alcohol to a point. For a while, I probably didn't drink alcohol for about 2.5 months, which is actually a very long time for me. But I'm slowly going back to having a drink because I shouldn't deny myself if I want to enjoy a glass of wine. So I'm definitely, finding that happy medium with that, eating healthily, making sure I'm eating properly, is massive. Generally, looking after your health, your health in general, makes a huge difference to how I am. And also through talking to you, Gladys, the realization that I've forgotten how to enjoy myself. um, and that's another thing that I'd forgotten, because I think I very rarely go out in the evenings. I don't have a huge circle of friends. I moved house a little bit further away from where I knew people, but I do like where I live, but I just not near people that I once knew. So I think that in part and part that made me a bit isolated. So yeah, that, and so that's another thing I've also done. I actually, Gladys, you encouraged me to try and find a hobby or a group or things that would help me, and I found this wonderful um, sort of membership group on by Facebook called Grounded Connections. It's quite new. It's about connecting up with like-minded women, not always of a certain age, but just where we're all really like-minded. Maybe we've got certain things in common, and they almost like match you with a group of people that they think that you would be matched with. So I went to my first meetup on Sunday. Like, this is the first time Gladys has heard this one. So I went to my first meetup on Sunday. There was supposed to be 5 of us, but a couple of them couldn't make it, so it just ended up being the 3 of us. And it was quite nerve-wracking. We were just meeting for a coffee just to get to know each other. And you know what? It was really good. I got out for a couple of hours, met 2 new people in similar situations, just finding new connections, maybe making new friends. Obviously, they matched us up because we had similar interests. And we're organising to do some sort of like craft workshop in January, which is a massive thing. So, yeah. That's a big, bold step for me to do stuff like that, because I would have said, if you'd asked me to do that about 6 months ago, I'll be like, I don't really want to do that. So that was a massive step, but it's another step that the reason why it's good to make the connections and try and get out and do more things, it's because it keeps your mind off of your tinnitus. You know, my tinnitus hasn't gone, but focusing on stuff that I enjoy keeps it in the background so you don't hear it. And that's a massive thing for me. And I've noticed the difference since getting myself more out and about, the difference it has made to my tinnitus. And then the other thing that I have done, I've got like a little pile of little things that I do, which is, again, is quite new. I've only been doing it, well, I suppose I've been doing it about 4, I've been to about 4 sessions now. I go to a thing called horse therapy. Now, again, it's one of those random things I found via Facebook, but it was a woman that I was reading a post and reading the comments on a post about something, and a woman had put in there about what she does. I was so intrigued, I had to message her and said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, come along. It's a 1-to-1 session. It's free. It's all funded. So I don't have to pay any session fees, which in a weird way makes it hugely like better for me, because I haven't got that worry about having to keep paying out for things all the time. And she owns small stables with a couple of horses. Now, horses are very special horses because they've been through quite a little bit of trauma themselves. So she's been helping to heal these horses. But one big thing that maybe a lot of people don't know about horses, they're very sensitive to other people's emotions. And they can feel, if you're stressed, they can feel it. And they're one of the quite a few animals that are very sensitive to your feelings like that. So part of working with the horses is not to be riding the horses, it's just to be around them. Sometimes you're grooming them, but sometimes you're not at all. She also does a lot of crafts, so sometimes you just do some crafting, and it's not about doing the crafting to take your mind off things. It's the lady that also who sort of is there, who, I don't know if she teaches the horse therapy, what she does. She says she has a special gift of also understanding other people's emotions. She can feel other people's emotions. And this woman is fantastic because she said things to me that I've thought, but not really said out loud. And I remember on my first session, I sat there and she said, I just want you to sit here on this log and I just want you to look out across the fields. Don't want you to do a lot. I'm just going to put some music in the background. And then I was about there for about 5 minutes, and she said to me, she said, I had this really strong emotion from you that, like, although you seem happy to be sitting here looking across at these fields, your brain is saying, I need to get going, I need to go off, and I need to get things done. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. My brain, as much as I like, she said, like, my brain was saying, I'm enjoying this view. I'm enjoying just sitting here looking at the horses. She said, but your body wanted to be off down that road and getting on with things 5 minutes ago. So for her to understand that although we think we are relaxed in our brains, our bodies are still not doing that. Our bodies are still programmed to be going 100 miles an hour. Again, she says she relates that back to your nervous system. So where you, Gladys, are also talking about the nervous system, she's also massively understanding of how our nervous system works, and that it just doesn't get released just like that. It takes time. So over these like 4 sessions, we've been doing different activities and just going with the flow and helping me to release and help my inner nervous system. And she said to me on my last session, which was last week, that she said, I've noticed a difference in the behavior of my horses around you. They're calmer around you, which is a massive sign that you are a lot calmer than what you was 4 sessions ago. So it's really interesting. So horses are very much an indicator. If a horse yawns a lot around you, they're releasing all your stress, which is really interesting. Yeah. So, but I really enjoy it because obviously I'm a massive animal lover. So that's something I really enjoy. I know that might not be for everyone, but for me, I get a lot out of those sessions. And although I do, and I'm within those sessions for a good couple of hours, but when I come away, there is this feeling of feeling so much more relaxed. And I can't really explain why. I just do feel more relaxed. So that's had a positive impact on me, and I definitely continue doing that for as long as I need it.
Incredible. I've loved learning about horse therapy, and I've learned
Mm,
more today about what you've just said about if they yawn. But it's just also incredible to hear how much you have been trying to help yourself, how you realize that this is a process, it's not going to happen overnight. And that realization that actually this could have just come from years and layers and layers and layers of trauma and things that we don't necessarily describe as big traumas, that we
yeah.
have to just work through. And you're definitely doing that. I mean, another thing, I don't know if you're happy sharing this, and if you're not, we can cut it out. It's not an issue at all. Was just about work. I know when you mentioned this spike happened, it was after a change in your work situation. How do you feel about talking about that journey into to working and
Yeah. So I'd spent most of my working life working in administration, but got to a stage where I was just not happy doing it. I think so. 2 years ago, my mum passed away. My mum was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her early 60s, and she'd passed away by the time she was 70. So, in terms of my trauma, that was probably one of my big traumas. Although I didn't live with my mum during that time, um, she, watching her when I used to visit her slowly change and slowly forget, and eventually go into a care home and see that person that was once this vibrant woman into this sort of ghost of a woman, is the only way you can describe it, was a massive had a massive impact on me, which I think it would have on most people. So at the time, I think I realized how much I think I'd learned that I'm what is the chance of me getting this. So that was another thing that affected me a bit, that worry of, oh God, what if I get Alzheimer's? And, though Alzheimer's can be very dependent on the type of dementia you have, it's not necessarily genetic. You can't help but feel that, well, if my mum's got it, what's the chances of me having it? But then it also, on the other hand, made me start thinking about, well, I need to live my life to the fullest, because if I've only got a certain amount of time left on this planet. So really, in a weird way, it brought out a sort of a positive change in me at that time. So I decided to step away from doing administration and go back to my roots. And I really, really love working with animals. So I took a job dog walking, working for this lovely lady. I knew her for a previous job, and she set up her own dog walking business, and I loved it. I used to get up every morning, get the van, pick up these dogs. I had my regular dogs and used to take them out. And I used to really enjoy it. I was out and about. And I'd been doing this for almost 6 months when sadly the lady I worked for had to let me go. And that was not really a fault of her own financial issues. I think I was at the time, it was like I was sad, but I didn't realize how much it affected it because I'd finally got somewhere where I was doing something I enjoyed, and all of a sudden it stopped. And although it didn't seem like a massive thing at the time, I think that might have been the ultimate trigger for what caused the change in my tinnitus. I think it was build up, build up, build up, and that was kind of like that final straw. So in my panic, I thought I need to find some work to do, and I ended up doing some temporary dog walking for another lady, but it just wasn't the same. It was completely different, but I felt like I needed to carry on because I needed to bring in some money. And I think the mix of all that, I just kind of caved in on myself, almost like well, the only way to describe it is I think that was the starting of me feeling like I was having a mental breakdown. And that's when the tinnitus started up, and then I went down, down, deeper and deeper. And then obviously the story I've mentioned about finding you and getting myself back up to normal. And so I one of the decisions about my healing journey was to find work I enjoyed, find a place that I enjoyed, do something I wanted to do. And I remember talking to you for ages about, and other people, I was like, I've always wanted to sort of set my own business up. And I thought about doing a dog walking business. I thought, oh, I'm going to set my dog walking business. And I was really sort of determined to do something like that. And then obviously when I wasn't feeling well for a while, for those weeks over the summer period, I stepped back and I didn't want to do anything. But after, as I say, after speaking to you, that sort of spark started to light up again. I could feel the sparks starting up again about, well, if I'm starting to improve my life, let's one of the big steps I need to do is what I'm going to do for a job. I need to do something that's going to make me happy. What am I going to do? And I don't know whether it was the universe, fate, or whatever you want to call it, but once again, there I was scrolling on Instagram, and I came across, there's a woman that I've been following for quite a few years on Instagram, and she runs a pet taxi business. And I'd seen her, she was based in the town not far from me. And all of a sudden, this post popped up about her saying that she's now expanding her business. She wants to franchise it out. And I was like, oh. So I sort of clicked the link to find out more, and it explained a lot about what owning a business would be like. And I was like, this is I couldn't get off my mind. I just sort of walked away from it, kept coming back to it. I was like, I can't get this off my mind. I need to speak to this woman. And long story short, I had a conversation with her. It felt like such the right thing to do that I basically bought a franchise and became a owner of a pet taxi service locally to where I live. And I'm still very early days with it. I've been doing more training at the moment, but I've just literally started going out doing all my marketing. But I do feel like it's made a huge difference to me, a huge difference to how I get up in the morning, having that routine, even though at the moment it's still I'm still warming up and still finding my feet, it's still a routine. And yeah, and I didn't think, if you had said to me 6 months ago, oh, just go on, I'll be like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't, I could barely sort of drag myself off the sofa and get out the door for a walk with the dog, let alone go and buy a bit and see myself by this December buying a business and running it. So yeah, it's been a massive change for me. I mean, I'm not saying that my tinnitus didn't worry me throughout the process, because it did, and we had conversations quite a lot about, but what if I can't do this? What if my tinnitus basically takes over my life? My worst case scenario is the tinnitus is going to take over my life. I'm going to fail at my business, and I'm just not going to get anywhere, and I'm going to be in debt. That's all I could think about. And I know you, Gladys, you kept going. Do something that does it bring you joy? Because if it brings you joy, pursue it. And like I say, I think I would have regretted it if I hadn't pursued it. So yeah, so here I am, December the 9th, sitting here, actually owning my own business and doing all my marketing. So yeah.
It's incredible, incredible. And I remember there were times where you, like you've just said, that you were worried about how it would have an impact on your tinnitus, but actually being pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
that when you were training, there'd be times that you didn't notice your tinnitus.
Yeah.
Really.
Absolutely. And one thing that I actually haven't mentioned, which I should have mentioned in terms of my tools to help me with my tinnitus, is what we mentioned earlier on, is that I did write a blog as well, which yeah, I remember you saying about writing a gratitude diary, and I know a lot of people do journals, but I really struggled with that process. But what I found a lot easier for me is to write down my thoughts and feelings into a blog. So I basically started a blog as well. It's just something on the side as a hobby, but I do feel like I realised after all the conversations and the research I had that there are so many people out there that are like me with tinnitus and we don't talk about it, that I just needed to get it out there, and not from a medical perspective, but from a normal person's perspective from it. So yeah, I've been doing that on the side as well, and that's really helped me. And I know that you shared it, which is fantastic. And it also part of this journey has made me realize how much I want to help other people with this. I don't really always know how I'm going to help people, but if my blog, if people reading my blog can help, because it talks about me and how I'm feeling, um, and what I'm going through, if that can resonate with somebody else and that helps somebody, then it's not all sort of doom and gloom. I talk about like having the tinnitus. I mean, I talk about the bad moments, but I also talk about how I've come out of those bad moments and how I am now. So it's a positive thing. I want it to be inspiring. I want other people that are sitting there suffering, no matter how old you are, to read it and go, well, if she can do it, then I can do it. So yeah.
Incredible. I think through your blog, you've helped so many people. I received so many messages from
Oh, it's
sharing
brilliant.
that. And I'm sure even just from this conversation too, you will help so many others too. Denise, you're such an inspiration in terms of how far you've come along this journey. I'll ask you just about sleep, because that was one of the things that you mentioned you really struggled with initially as well as just kind of functioning on a day-to-day basis. What's that like for you now?
My sleep's a lot better. Um, when I say it's a lot better, I mean, I do have my bad days. I definitely go through my fluctuations. So it's not all roses around the door. And I'm still learning. I'm still on this journey, to help me with my tinnitus. And I do have moments where my tinnitus will flare up. And it's usually at night it flares up. I don't know why it's at night, always at night. And it's not because it's quiet, because it's just really random. And the one thing I've learned is to cope with those flare ups. That's the biggest thing as well, which has helped my sleep. And when I do have a flare up, I though I mentioned that I use that people sort of use a lot of sound aids. I mean, I still recommend a sound aid. I have like a little sound aid. It actually looks like a little an Amazon Alexa, one of those sort of little round pod things, and I put it on at night sometimes and it produces a noise, and you can choose what noise you want. Mine's like the nice sounds of like a rolling river, that sort of noise. And when my tinnitus is spike when it spikes, and I wake up in the night and it's spiked, my first thought is, oh no, it's here again. And that horrible feeling when your heart starts racing and you're like, oh, I don't want that. And it does still happen to me. But then because I've got that toolkit to help me, I can calm down myself down a lot quicker. I'll maybe put my sound aid on. And that noise is a massive distraction, because actually, because I'm constantly hearing that rolling river noise, it takes away that sound of the spiking and it calms it down. And quite often I'll end up falling asleep with the sound aid on. And I might have had it on for an hour or two, have gone off to sleep. And then I might turn it off if it's still nighttime. And sometimes I find my tinnitus has gone, and it's like, oh, that really did help. So there are so that has helped in my sleep because I slept. I had appalling. I've been having appalling sleep for a long, long time. So yeah, I mean, on the nights when it spikes, it's not a perfect night's sleep, but it's a lot better than what it was because I've learned to calm myself down when I wake up to be able to help myself drift off to sleep again, and that's the big thing. That's the biggest thing. I mean, I think as a woman as well, we go through, certainly of my age, but certainly any women really on their menstrual cycle, certain times of the month, your body and your mind and your nervous system can feel so much more heightened than it normally does. And for those people that are menopausal, perimenopausal, that feeling of being heightened is super heightened. And I know that is a massive issue for some people as well. So not only having tinnitus, having perimenopausal there is like two big things there that I'm having to cope with on a daily basis. But if you can find the right things to help calm you down, I would massively encourage people to do it. And one thing is having a belief. You have to believe that you are going to get better. And for those that maybe are watching this and they're just starting out on this journey and they think, oh my God, I'm never going to get over this. It does get better. It does get better, you know, but you've got to have that self-belief and you've got to have that want to make yourself better. And that is really hard sometimes. It is really hard. It's one of the hardest things mentally I've had to try and do for a long, 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 long time. But having that self-belief that it will get better and there are ways out there and there are people out there that can help you will make it so much easier for you is the only thing I can say. So yes, after that, my sleep pattern is so much better. But yeah, but having the belief that it will get better does help.
I think that was really a really powerful thing to share, and actually answers my next question, which was, what would you tell somebody who is starting on this journey?
Yeah,
So thank you for doing that.
no
Um,
worries.
what would you say to just lastly, what would you say to a past version of yourself who was struggling? So if you think back to sort of 6 months ago,
Yeah,
and where you are today, what would you say to that person?
I think I would look at that person and say, it's okay, give yourself a break. It's okay to be unwell with this. Because I think that's another thing that people don't understand with tinnitus. It's a condition, but it can make you feel really ill. And that can be mentally ill or that can be even physically ill because it can affect your body if you're not eating properly and things like that. So I would say, give yourself a break, accept that you're not well. I think the acceptance that you're not well, and then you can give yourself time off, whether that means taking time out of work, anything like that, give yourself that time. And I suppose, like I've mentioned before, give yourself that self-belief that it will get better. And the belief system that although you feel like you're the only one in the world with it, you are not the only one in the world with it. And there are people out there that want to help you get better.
I can't thank you enough.
That's okay.
This was just incredible. I don't want to, I mean, you know me, I could talk to you forever, Denise. We have incredible conversations.
You do.
But I don't want to steal any more of your time. I think this
Oh,
has
that's okay.
been really helpful, and I'm sure it will help so many people. So I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story
Not
and
a
being so
problem.
vulnerable and transparent as well. So
I
thank
think I think with tinnitus, I think the big thing that people don't do, there's not enough vulnerability around. People are not open enough, and I think the more open we are about it, the more understanding we are, and hopefully the more research we get into helping people with it.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.